to maintain our position, to be still considered one of the top clubs in England and in Europe, has been a creditable achievement.
We want to see success on the pitch as well, and at the moment I think that's where the frustrations do lie within the club, that we're not quite achieving that.
There's 92 clubs in England and we're always in the top 4. I mean, that's, if you look at it that way, it is remarkable.
On the 15th of May 2004, Arsenal defeated Leicester City by 2-1, crowning their status as champions for that season and subsequently becoming the first side in the Premier League to go unbeaten for an entire league campaign, one of the best sides to grace English football. I was 7 years old, little over 2 weeks away from my 8th birthday. I wish I could say that I had more of an understanding at the time of the moments in footballing history that Arsenal had achieved that day. Almost 13 years later, at the age of 20, I have become accustomed to abject performances, underachievement and mediocrity, but moreover, incredible consistency in every sense of the word. I have been teased with glory in recent years, winning back-to-back FA Cups and seeing the acquisitions of Alexis Sanchez and Mesut Ozil suggest the club has turned a corner. However, here we are in 2017, with the club entering the vicious cycle we bear witness to season upon season. To progress, something must change to awake this stagnating giant. With Arsenal now revelling in financial gain following the move to the Emirates Stadium, the club that I and so many others love has to be basking in more success.
It really's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. You've got periods where there's been exceptional football. You know, I think some of the football that we saw played by when we had sort of Fabregas and Rosicky and Hleb playing around the 2008 period was some beautiful football. You know, so I think we've seen some of the best football, some better football than even was played during the Invincibles. But we've also seen then that us slip into a period of repetitive mistakes, repetitive failings. Yes, you know, we might not have had as much money, but I think, you know, we would all agree that maybe the money wasn't spent quite the way it should have been in terms of some of the players that we brought in, some of the wages that were paid to other players. And then I think really it's become more about, it's become a bit more of a circus.
The feeling of stagnating, the coming to this stadium and watching my team play in one of the best arenas in Europe and seeing the ability we have on the pitch, seeing the Sanchez's and the Ozils and Xhakas and people, seeing the potential of this football club, travelling all over the country with the best set of away fans. They're absolutely phenomenal, and we like I say, other fans might think we're very entitled talking like this, but honestly I do feel that we are massively underachieving as a club, and the potential, and that's what hurts me the most, the lack of will to really go out and win titles and be a top Champions League club and get the best young players in Europe and really kick on from what we are. And that's what hurts me as a fan at the moment, because I feel like out of my own pocket every season I'm working Monday to Friday to afford to come to the Arsenal, and I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world, and I'm not going to moan about an average price of £39 a game and all that. I don't think that's that bad, and what frustrates me is that the club aren't sharing the same ambition as probably our fan base and as what they've become off the pitch.
The situation in general is fairly good, and let me explain what I mean. I mean, it's fairly good in the long term. You know, we've moved stadiums because we knew Highbury, you know, as lovely as it was, and as much as we loved it as fans as it was, we knew that we had to move. We had to increase our revenue, our matchday revenue, to compete with the big boys and stuff. And yeah, there's been other things that have gone on in the middle, rich owners, TV money just going off the roof that have affected it. But in terms of matchday revenue, we're up there. We are at the top. You know, we're competing with everyone on matchday revenue. If you look at the league table today, if you look at our results in Europe over the last few seasons, we haven't quite competed there, and that's probably where the frustration lies. So as good as that long-term stuff is, short-term we want to win trophies. You know, we've signed players like Alexis Sanchez, like Mesut Ozil, and co, which means, you know, they've got short careers. You know, we want to win when they're here. They want to win when they're here.
You know, I don't think 2 FA Cups is really enough for where we were as a club, even given the fact that there were financial restrictions and austerity period, etc., etc. And particularly when you look and you see that, you know, we did better in the Champions League when we we hadn't been long at the Emirates with the likes of Denilson and Bentner playing than we are now with a much better squad. So I'd say not from a club point of view. Many teams build new stadiums and struggle. We've seen that most clubs who've built a new stadium have suffered from that and have gone, down through the divisions and struggled to get back. Sort of Southampton are a prime example of that. Derby County were an example of that as well. So I guess you'd say that whilst we weren't at the level of those clubs, we've to maintain our position to be still considered one of the top clubs in England and in Europe has been a creditable achievement, which Arsene Wenger will have to take a huge amount of credit for.
I was born literally just before the Anfield '89, and my old man, born and bred, brought me up, took me to my first game. Right, he scored a penalty in the North Bank against Sheffield Wednesday in the League Cup, and John Hartson scored as well. And I remember he held me up aloft. Didn't even watch the penalty. I was only a young lad, hands in front of the eyes, and I just loved the club from that day on. And I got to go to Highbury quite a few times. I was lucky, not a season ticket holder at Highbury, but I was going regularly quite often, getting tickets elsewhere. And remember my first North London derby, Jose Antonio Reyes 1-0 at Highbury, being in the West Stand right by the segregation, just the pandemonium, the feeling, and it's just something you're born into as a fan. And even now, we all talk about the Emirates and we all talk about what it's not got, but it's a fantastic place to watch a football, and unfortunately that had to happen, that transition, and we all loved Highbury and we all still do. But I think if we get some success at this stadium and we start adding to that trophy hall around the stadium inside with league titles and memories at the Emirates, we've had a few, but nothing anywhere near the levels of Highbury, and obviously at Highbury it was over 100 years, so it's going to take a while to replicate that in this stadium. But I do love the Emirates, and I think it's still growing. And I don't know if you remember when the Emirates first opened, we've done so much to make this more of an Arsenal stadium. Originally it was just almost a bare dome, and now there's a lot of history and a lot of, you walk around the stadium, it's fantastic. And Arsenal as a football club means so much to me and so much to everyone of every age, but I think we had to make this move, and it doesn't upset me, the Emirates, and I don't feel it's not home. I just feel that when we add history to it, it's going to be, but it'll take time, and we're in a position now because of the Emirates to compete at the highest level, and that had to happen.
I was quite spoiled, I guess, because I grew up at a time where Arsenal were quite good. Where in the early years, I was sort of around during the latter end of George Graham and then that Bruce Rioch season, where I was probably still quite young, so it was still all an experience to me. I didn't quite, I'm still learning, I'm still being educated in the game. But then sort of that when Arsene Wenger came in 96, but that 97 to 98 season when we won the league and won the double, and sort of experiencing that was just absolutely tremendous, and you thought, wow, this is what it feels like. And that's when I really learned football. And then going forward, we had a couple of seasons where Man United ran away with it, but then another double, FA Cups, the Invincible season, Champions League final. That was all that time where I was very spoiled because I was seeing success pretty much every season. For us then, competing in the league but not winning it was actually kind of close to failure, which is unbelievable because at the moment all we're saying is we want to compete.
By the time I started going regularly around sort of 74, the team was beginning to struggle, and we had a couple of pretty, like by the Arsenal standards that I'd sort of grown up with, and certainly over the last sort of 30 odd years, poor seasons, where we sort of finished in the bottom half of the table, and not far off the relegation battle. I don't think we were ever really in any danger in the same way that we weren't in '95, but we were down there and it wasn't looking good, and it was only sort of Jimmy Rimmer in goal and sort of Brian Kidd scoring a few goals, and I think the emergence of the likes of David O'Leary, Liam Brady coming through, Frank Stapleton as well. I'll wash my mouth out later for mentioning him, of course. That sort of picked up that team. Look, it's no secret to anyone who knows me that I don't want Arsene Wenger to continue managing this club. I haven't wanted him to be manager for quite some time, but I've got respect for the guy, and part of that is the worry that what I see now, and because I feel it myself as well, is that people are losing so much respect for him because of his attitude, because of some of his familiar, the way that he reacts to bad results, the way that it's always someone else's fault, you know, his antics on the touchline, which when it's Arsenal it's acceptable, and if it was another manager it wouldn't be. So, you know, I don't want him to go in a bad way, and I just think the longer this goes on, the worse it gets for him.
My opinion on him as a man, as Arsenal manager for 21 years, is nothing but respect. I guess it goes down to that bit, that the previous question and the previous bit we talked about how I grew up, how I felt about football, because I was so used to glory, I was so used to winning most seasons, and that was all in that Arsene Wenger era, the first 10 years of the Arsene Wenger era. So I've got nothing but respect for the man. You know, there's just, he's given me so much. You know, all his teams have given me so much. Same way, you know, there's former players, they could say what they want. You know, some of those, you know, when Sol Campbell comes out and if he's critical slightly, or Tony Adams is critical, you know what? Fair play, it's their opinion, but the moments and the memories they've given me is just, and what they've done for this football club, that bypasses everything. That is the biggest, and Arsene Wenger's the same.
I don't want to make this into a debate about a manager or not, because there's a lot of issues at the club, but I do personally feel that Arsene is sort of stuck in that transition period where he achieved miracles, and for me, probably his greatest achievement was them 7 years in the transition to, like you say, with them squads keep us where he did, and thanks to him we stayed in the Champions League, and we come out the other side, £42 million on Ozil, 35 on Sanchez the next season, and frustratingly for me, the year after that we didn't follow it up, and we were the only club in top 5 leagues in Europe not signing an outfield player, and obviously we got check-in, but we didn't kick on, and Flamini played, and Leicester City won the title, which blew the whole financial situation out of the water, because now other clubs are doing it without the billionaires, and I just feel that we've seen the same squad do the same failings year in, year out, and something has got to change. And it's that old cliche that we keep hearing, time for change, but I really genuinely do think it is, and something within the club has to change. And personally, I do think that although the board are putting no pressure on Arsene, and he's got it an easy ride, and I just feel that with another manager in there, that, like you said, the squad of players we've got are phenomenal, and I'd like to see a younger manager with a bit more oomph and a bit more, you know, want to win titles again. I'm not saying Arsene doesn't, but I just feel he's not outdated, but the man has achieved so much for this club, and he's a legend, and he should have a statue out here, and I know he's got one inside, but he could even have a stand named after him. He's that much of a legend. But I just feel it is time to move on, and we could get a younger, more exciting manager in, and I really do think with this squad of players we can be winning the title like Chelsea. Complete transition, went from 10th to possibly champions, and I think it is literally a flick of the switch away from us competing. And you see what City are doing on and off the pitch. They're trying to compete in the Champions League. Pep Guardiola, exciting times, young players like Gabriel Jesus want to join them from Brazil, and we used to be exciting like that, Arsenal. We used to be a really big pull, and I think off the pitch we are, but on it, do players really want to come? We're looking at Mbappe and people like that, the young French talents now. You think, well, years ago they would have bit your arm off to go Arsenal, but it's difficult now. There's so many clubs doing what we've done, and Arsenal really have got to own their size and start getting ourselves out there and proving that we are what we've become, and I just want it to happen so much, as we all do.
Maybe his ideas are a little bit outdated now, you know. I mean, it's all very well asking a certain amount of, you know, a certain set of players, you know, all right lads, you know, just go out, play your game, play with freedom, play with expression. If you do that, you'll be good enough to win this game. That's fine with a certain group of players. With another group of players, it's different. You need to be more on top of the tactics. You need to be more on top of how you're motivating those players. You know, you need to be more on top of how you use a player like Mesut Ozil. Mesut Ozil will not win you a league title on his own. He won't do it. Alexis Sanchez might, but Mesut Ozil won't. You know, he doesn't win the World Cup for Germany on his own. He wins the World Cup for Germany because Germany know exactly what to do with him, and he is a key part of an overall jigsaw that works for Germany. At Arsenal, it's just not happening. You know, be that he hasn't got the players in front of him to provide, or he's being asked to do too much defensively. Who knows? But I just think that Wenger is not. He's not doing what he needs to be doing, and he seems to switch from one way of dealing with the team to another way of dealing with it, and then he tries another tactic, and then he'll go back to another tactic, and he'll do the same thing with players. Look at Lucas Perez. Surely Lucas Perez maybe deserves a bit more of a run in the side. He's not getting it. Why is he not getting it? Because maybe he just doesn't fit in with what Wenger wants to do with his first 11. So I just think Wenger's been, his day is gone, and I think we now need a more dynamic manager who's going to actually get more out of this squad.
There should be a statue, there should be a stand named after him, because I think he deserves it. I guess your next question is going to be the Arsene Wenger of today. And that's where, I think this season's been big. I mean, when he signed his new deal in 2014, it was leaked to the press, or it was certainly in the press, that, Arsenal expect to win a league in the next 3 years, or certainly really compete for a league in the next 3 years. That was that FA Cup win against Hull, was then the let's go out and do it. And then we got Alexis Sanchez that summer. Everything then was like, well, actually Arsenal are on the right track. But then 3 years have now passed where we've won an FA Cup, another one, which is great. But we don't look like, well, we might win another, which again would be great. But in the league, have we really competed? Probably not. And, nothing lasts forever. Nothing, and I don't think, I remember one Arsene Wenger press conference when he kind of said that, everyone has opinions, which is great, but there's a little bit of a people fear saying, I don't know. It just seems like everyone's an expert. And he said that there's no shame in saying, I don't know. And for me, that's a little bit like there's no shame in now saying, you know what, I've done my job here. I've been here 21 years. I've taken the club from, Arsenal were massive before he came in, and it's, make no bones about that. But he certainly made Arsenal bigger in a period where, TV money, rich owners came in, stadium moves, etc. So he's kind of done a great job, and I don't think there's any shame in saying, you know what, that's potentially me done. Over to the next person, but I've left great foundation, and I think he absolutely has.
We're the fifth richest in the world. We can't even get past the last 16 in the Champions League. That's mad. Like, realistically, we should be competing better, and there's a number of reasons from like I said, from the top to the bottom, and everyone's disappointed with Stan Kroenke. I actually quite like Ivan Gazidis. I think he's done a very good job. He helped us through them years coming into the Emirates. He's done very well to realistically get a lot of people to invest their money into this club sponsorship and that, when we hadn't really won a trophy for 7 years.
Stan Kroenke doesn't give a damn for the fans. I don't think anybody on the board particularly cares about the fans. They're very distant and far removed from the support. Arsenal is a very traditional club. It tries to maintain those aspects, which every single Arsenal fan wants them to do. We're all very proud of our history and the way that we do things. But there's a time when you have to sort of think, well, hold on, guys, it is 2017. You do need to think about the fans as well. Just to say the fans, let them eat cake, it doesn't really work like that anymore. But the problem we've got is that, of course, is if I stop going, there's someone else who will take up my ticket. It's the same at Man United. So this is where the business side of it rules that aspect. Do they really need to care about us? Probably not.
I don't think they care about the fans. I don't feel like they care about the fans. Like I said earlier, I quite like Ivan Gazidis. But above that, Kroenke, Chips Keswick, you just feel a disconnect. Like, you see Roman Abramovich, and he come with all these millions, but that guy loves Chelsea now. Every week he's there going mental. Like, he loves the club, and don't want to compare us to other clubs too much, because realistically, as long as the money's coming in and the manager's got the available funds, I think the frustration lies is where they don't care about the club, is there's no pressure being put on our manager to perform, to succeed. As long as we maintain the financial situation of being in the Champions League and continue raking in the money and the stadiums are full, I don't think these guys really care, and that's really frustrating for me. And a lot of people talk to back Arsenal up about David Dean leaving and Dick Law come in and replaced him, and he's helped broker a few big deals, but something somewhere isn't quite right. And I think the lack of pressure from the board down on the manager, and the lack of, I'm not going to say will to win from the manager, because Arsenal's fantastic, but there's just really a feeling of the club becoming stale, and it shouldn't be, because look where we are and look where we sat and look what we've got and look at the players we've got and everything about us. The sponsorship deals were huge, and we've got Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez at our club, and whether they stay beyond the summer, that for me is massive for our club, and if they do leave, then we have to reinvest. But I do think the one thing I'd say about the board, as much as disinterest they got in the club, the money's always been there for Arsenal to spend since he signed Ozil. It's clear to us that the funds have been there, and this season 35 on Xhaka, Mustafi, like you said earlier, Perez, even Perez, £17 million on a pot shot. There's a lot of money out there available for us to spend, and if Arsenal isn't spending it and it's not happening on the pitch, then that's where the pressure needs to come from above.
I get people that are showing banners or arranging protests. I get that, because how else maybe they feel, how else can you influence, things, and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, I don't know, but I certainly get it. But it's, it's maybe not for me. Those people, do they have respect for Arsene Wenger? Do they not? I don't know. I would guess many do. But many just think it's time for a change and are trying to do something about it the best way they can, or the best way they think they can. Whereas there's some people who potentially, like myself, who appreciate it probably is time for a change.
Look, I don't enjoy arguing with other Arsenal supporters. I don't enjoy that. I mean, people may look at my Twitter account and think otherwise. I'm all up for a good debate and a bit of banter, and if people come at me, they'll get it back. But I don't enjoy the fact that that's what we're doing, and that's what we spend the majority of our time doing at the moment. We're knocking lumps out of each other. And, and conversely, while we're all like fighting each other, the board are quite happily going, well, they're all knocking each other out, and they're not thinking about how do we actually put some pressure on the board to make some changes. So they're happy for us to be doing that, and I don't like it. The other bit is that at the stadium, it's pretty much, it's like Groundhog Day. When you go to the games, it's Groundhog Day. And, and I mean, that's coming from someone who's been going since 74. So, it's a long time to be going and watching a lot of Arsenal football matches. And people forget you've seen a lot of games, you've seen a lot of stuff happen. And you get to a point where you recognise when the same thing keeps happening. And now it's just, I enjoy meeting up with people before the game and having a drink, or meeting up with them after the game, more than I actually enjoy watching the football, because the football is pretty much very similar now. It's very rare that we put on a brilliant display like the home win against Chelsea. The rest of the time it's sort of fairly perfunctory performances against lower teams that we should be beating, that we either beat reasonably well or we struggle to beat and nick one at the end. So for me, it's watching the football. It's just all become, and the whole atmosphere around it, the whole thing about the fans, and I struggle with the hypocrisy of it as well. That when we wanted to do time for change, people were turning around, and if you held up your time for change banner, people were like having a go at you. But at half time, when it's 0-0 or 1-1, they'd stand out and they're booing. They're booing the players. Now, I don't stand up and boo players. I don't boo players. There's no point in that. It achieves nothing. But these people do. But they don't think there's anything wrong at the club, but they want to stand up and boo. So I just struggle with the matches now, to be fair. That's probably the hardest bit for me.
Such a divide in the club and between people, and even your friends, you'll go down the pub and there's people arguing with their mates in the pub before the game. Like, not horribly, but it's just such a divide, and something does really need to change in and around, just to get the feel-good factor back at the club, because like we saw with Jose last season at Chelsea, the divide that was happening with the fans and the rats and all that, all of a sudden, new manager in, everyone pulls together, every player's going in the same direction, and things can happen. And like you mentioned earlier, our squad's good enough, and the stadium's good enough, our finances are good enough, everything's in position for Arsenal to really become the massive, massive club we are. And Arsene frustrates the life out of me, and I love him to bits, but I do honestly think it's time to go. And from everything about him this season, his team selections, there's baffling, there's so many questions that were unanswered, and we can't, even in-game management, like the tactics during games, we're going to Chelsea, we're all picking teams, and not one of them's the same as what Arsene decides to pick, and he knows a hell of a lot more than me or anyone else here, of course he does, but there's something not right, and you can see the players. And for me, Arsene looks defeated. He always bounces back, and he always will, because he's that kind of guy. But it looks to me like he's in his last spell, and he looks drained, and I feel drained, and I think a lot of the fan base feel drained, and we just want that excitement back. And I do feel another 2 years of Arsene would really turn nasty. Even if he made the top 4 and won the FA Cup, I still now don't think for a club of our size that is enough. And it might sound very privileged to a lot of other fans that I'm sitting here saying this in front of our 60,000 seater stadium, but we have become a very big club, and we've done brilliantly to do it, and Arsene is the mainstay of that. But I just think times change and things have to change, and we have to move on.
I love this club. I just think people think that because you want change at the club, because you want a new manager, that you don't support the club. And this is something that I struggle to understand. You know, I don't want rid of Arsene Wenger because I think it's bad for Arsenal Football Club. I think it's the best thing for Arsenal Football Club. You know, that's why I want it. If I thought Arsene Wenger staying in charge was the best thing for the football club, I'd be Wenger in. But I don't. So therefore, I want a new manager. I want a change of structure. I want a change of what we keep seeing season after season for the last few years. You know, so when people say, "Oh, you don't love the club, you're not supporting it," this is complete rubbish. We want change because we love the club and because we feel the club is stagnating. And to think otherwise is just ridiculous.
Having supported this club for as long as I can remember, I have never felt as frustrated as I currently do. Arsene Wenger is a hero of mine, and I'm not ashamed to say that I don't know any different from him. He's provided me with some beautiful moments growing up supporting Arsenal. But whether it be for a change of manager or not, unity amongst fans is of paramount importance if we're to see Arsenal succeed. Change should be embraced, not feared.